My boyfriend got married, and the bride wasn't me. I stood in the audience, watching him hold hands and look into the eyes of another woman. He said he didn't remember me anymore. But later, I clearly heard him tell that woman that no one would bother us anymore. I had a secret crush on Andres for 7 years. From high school to university. Back then, Andres was the kind of person everyone would praise whenever talked about, and I didn't even have the courage to get close to him. In order to be able to look him straight in the eye and truly be a worthy match standing beside him, I chased after him for 7 years. On the day my confession was successful, I was so excited that I tossed and turned in bed and didn't sleep a wink all night. The long journey of my secret crush ended, and our relationship began. I thought we could walk hand in hand all the way. However, after an accident, he didn't remember me anymore. He even avoided my touch. I always told myself that it was the guy I had chased for 7 years. What did it matter to wait a little longer? His memory would come back. But I didn't wait until that day. Andres got married. The wedding that day was grand. Andres held her hand and carefully put a diamond ring on her finger. That diamond ring was really beautiful. It was the style I liked. I started to cry as I watched from the audience. My fingers were shaking as I tugged on Rosa's hand. If Andres hadn't forgotten me, would it be me standing on the stage? Rosa's expression changed. She looked up at me with a complex gaze. She didn't say anything but just held my hand tightly. I immediately laughed and said, I was just joking. As long as he's safe, that's all that matters. Really. Andres' wife was very beautiful, and she was completely different from me in style. I watched from a distance as she complained about how high the heels were today and how tired she was. Andres chuckled and gently patted her on the head, saying softly, Mrs. Andres, you've worked up a sweat. She changed from being angry to smiling and secretly planted a kiss on Andres' face. Before I could continue watching, Rose blocked my view. She was probably afraid that I would cause trouble. I won't cause trouble anymore. Last time when I wanted Andres to regain his memory, it ended up giving him a headache for many days. I don't dare to do that anymore. Besides, it was his wedding today. How could I bear to do anything? I smiled at Rose and said, no, not anymore. Not in the future either. I just want to take a few more looks today. Look, that Andres is still as gentle as ever. It's nice. I can control myself. I'm just a bit sad. After the wedding was over, I sat in my seat and didn't get up for a long time. I had really fantasized about my wedding with Andres many times. Back when we were together, Rose and I had talked through several nights about things like how to choose a wedding dress, what kind of bouquet would look nice, whether the wedding should be Chinese or Western style. We even enthusiastically picked out the dishes for half the night. We had arranged everything properly. Except that we never expected that the protagonist of this wedding wouldn't be me. I looked up at Rose and said that I wouldn't cry today. But at the end of it all, I couldn't really help it. What should I do? His future has nothing to do with me anymore. Rose, I really lost him. I couldn't say anything more. 7 years of secret crush and 3 years of relationship. Andres, who had been in my life for a whole 10 years, was completely lost to me today, right in front of me. I don't even have the identity to like him anymore. I had a good cry. When I woke up in the middle of the night, I suddenly felt suffocated looking at the moon outside the window. I gasped for air, feeling a dense pain in my heart. It took me a long time to recover from the suffocation. By chance, I opened my high school diary. Page after page was filled with the innocent and intense crushes of my high school days. I sat on the floor and read it for a very long time. When you're young, liking someone can really last for a very long time. So long that you don't even know where the end is. The diary was already very old, but it was still well preserved. Back then, I had thought about showing this diary to Andres, but I never got the chance. When I carefully opened the first page, my eyes were already red. That was the moment when I first met Andres. September 21st, Sunny the teacher held us back in class, and I didn't get the mushroom noodles I wanted to eat. But today I met a guy who also didn't get it. I looked as some familiarity to me. It seemed he was from the same grade. I had heard the girls in my class mention him. He probably sensed it too and looked up, smiling. He looked really nice when he smiled. My heart started beating faster, and I quickly looked away. September 23rd, Sunny, I went to eat mushroom noodles again today. What a coincidence, I met this guy again. He was a few places ahead of me in the line. I deliberately took a couple of extra looks. He was the same as me. Today, both of us got the noodles. When I went to ask questions during the evening self-study, I also saw him in the office. What a coincidence. His side profile looked quite nice too. When I got back, I found out that he was Andres, who had entered the school as the top scorer. He was such a straight-A student. So amazing. Could I work hard enough to be among the top few too? September 27th, light rain. It rained today. I stepped into a puddle, and my shoes got up wet. I felt uncomfortable all morning. I kind of dislike rainy days. When I entered the cafeteria, I just passed by Andres, who was coming out. He was so tall. I was probably not even up to his shoulder. October 25th, cloudy. I seemed to be unconsciously noticing the time when Andres ate. He probably always liked to eat some later when there were fewer people. Was this the habit of a straight-A student? Being alone. I deliberately lingered in the classroom for a while before going downstairs today, but I didn't meet him. I was a bit disappointed. Anyway, I'll eat and then work hard. There's so much to learn. I'll be really sleepy in the afternoon classes. I have to remember to wash my face before class. November 8th, the monthly exam results came out, and the evening self-study was in an uproar. Many classmates quietly ran to the office to peek at the results early. I heard them say that Andres was the top scorer in the grade again. So strong. I scrolled down the list bit by bit. My name wasn't even on the first page. I was a bit disappointed. Neither he nor I were on the same page. We're both people, but the gap is so big. November 11th, a sunny day that I like after many days. For the mushroom noodles this time, Andres was right behind me. When I noticed this, I stammered when I was getting the food, and my face turned bright red. It was only when I found a seat and sat down that I realized what I was nervous about. It was so strange. December 1st, Sunny, probably because I was always paying attention. I met him a lot more often. But I don't mind. Andres liked water and didn't like drinks. He would always go to the supermarket to buy a bottle of water after the evening self-study. I also like to stop by the supermarket entrance for a while. This should be the most relaxing moment of the day. I didn't think about anything. I just emptied my mind simply, watched Andres by the water and come out of the supermarket, and then followed him not too far and not too close behind, and then slowly walked back to the dormitory. I raised my hand to touch my tears. I felt my head swelling and extremely uncomfortable. Back then, I always liked to look for Andres subconsciously in the crowd. It seemed that the moment I saw him, my hanging heart could be put down. Back then, I probably didn't even understand what liking someone was. I just simply wanted to see this person. Seeing him made me feel happy. Later, when I realized that I liked this person, it was in the second half of my freshman year of high school. Early that morning, I heard several girls in my class discussing that a girl from the neighboring class was going to confess her love to Andres. News like this always spread quickly and enthusiastically in high school. Whispers during the morning self-study were all about this matter. The hand holding my pen was unconsciously tightening. That was the first time I got distracted in class. There were a lot of people in the cafeteria at noon. From the moment I entered, my eyes were constantly searching. Finally, I saw Andres in a corner where it wasn't too crowded. It was very cold today. His coat was very thin, and he was eating with a calm expression. He probably didn't know about the confession tonight. But even if he did, he probably wouldn't be affected much. Because ever since I met him, whether it was giving a speech on stage in front of the whole school or any other activity, his expression was always extremely calm and composed. Nothing could arouse his emotions. But I was on edge all day. I secretly watched the girl who was going to confess. In the black and white high school life where all the girls were ordinary, she was like a colorful butterfly. She quietly landed beside the boy. Andres stood still. The lights on the playground were dim, and I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only saw him lower his head slightly, quietly listening to the confession of the girl opposite him. The combination of the hot topics like confession, being the top scorer in the grade, and Andres was enough to stir up a huge wave in the dull high school life. There were many people coming to join the fun. I was more nervous than anyone else in the crowd, but I was also better at hiding it than anyone else. I was also like an ordinary onlooker coming to join the fun, silently watching from a distance. Waiting. That moment, when I think back now, still feels extremely long. It was also the peak of my heartbeat at that moment that made me realize I probably fell in love with this boy. The word like, just two simple words, was enough to make the heart of a youth in puberty beat nonstop. He was like a gentle breeze that appeared inadvertently. When I accidentally came back to my senses, I found that, without knowing when, this breeze had already whirled into my heart. The girl's confession didn't succeed in the end. In order to hear clearly, I deliberately got a bit closer. I heard Andres answer. His voice was low and deep, but extremely gentle. He said, "Thank you for your liking, but for the sake of our respective futures, I won't accept. We should focus more on the right things at the present time. Flowers have their blooming seasons. I also hope that my appearance won't delay you. What do you think?" He spoke neither too fast nor too slow. He refused decisively but not abruptly. A boy like this was hard to resist during puberty. I was no exception. In the second year of high school, when we were divided into liberal arts and science classes, Andres and I were assigned to the same class. I still remember that when we entered the classroom at the same time that day, my emotions didn't calm down until the end of the evening self-study. How could I calm down? I no longer had to deliberately pass by the corridor and quickly glance through the window every day. I no longer had to deliberately look for his figure in the cafeteria every day. I no longer had to learn about his daily life through the girls in my class. I didn't dare to show too much happiness, but I clearly remember that day's diary was filled with a whole page. He looked so focused and serious in class. He could always grasp and absorb the key points of knowledge immediately. I tried my best to catch up with his pace, just to get closer to him. I would always notice the distance between my monthly exam results and his. Even if I could close the gap by one rank, it would make me happy for the whole afternoon. That meant that I was slowly and steadily trying to get closer to him. That day, I summoned up my courage and finally said the first sentence to Andres. I asked him for help with a math problem. Andres was always extremely patient with his classmates. He explained each step very carefully. After finishing the explanation, he looked up at me and asked, "Well, do you understand?" I nodded as if possessed by some strange force. But actually, I hadn't really grasped it. When you're close to the person you like, your brain just can't function normally. After class, I studied it on my own for a long time. Suddenly, when I looked up, I found Andres standing beside my desk. There was a hint of laughter in his voice. After staring at me for 2 seconds, he said with a smile, "Actually, I can explain it again." I was stunned and just stood there. After a while, I managed to blurt out, "Huh?" Andres bent down slightly, snatched the pen from my hand. Before starting to explain again, he tilted his head to meet my gaze and instructed, "This time, you have to follow my train of thought and listen carefully." The sunset glow that day was magnificent, painting half of the sky red. It also tinted my face red. If anyone could hear my heartbeat, they would surely notice its excitement at that moment. In that monthly exam, I got the same score as Andres in math. We both had high scores tied for the top in the grade. I touched the paper, with tears welling up in my eyes. All the hard work during this period hadn't been in vain. I didn't dare to disrupt his progress. All I could do was to get closer to him step by step. Wait for the right time, until I was good enough, then I would confess my feelings. Having a secret crush is like a chaotic war within one person. In countless moments when Andres was unaware, behind my feigned calmness, I was already in such a mess that it couldn't bear closer inspection, but also on countless unbearable nights, just thinking of such a belief was enough to support me to move forward. Back then, I was always clumsily using questions as an excuse to get in contact with him. And he could always solve each problem beautifully. He remembered my name, and that was enough to make me happy for a very time. The evening self-study back then was always my favorite time. Because the teacher would always ask Andres to sit on the podium. As long as I looked up, I could see him. The time when I got the best grades, I was the first person who could knock Andres off the throne of the top scorer in the grade. During that self-study session, everyone was talking about my extraordinary performance this time. Only Andres was sitting in his seat, quietly looking at the paper. Perhaps sensing my gaze, he looked up slightly. My gaze that I didn't have time to avoid collided with his. At that moment, it felt like something exploded in my heart. Andres didn't say anything but just raised his wrist and gave me a thumbs up. Simple and pure liking is an emotion that is hard to resist even when looking back now. In the second half of senior year in high school, I was on the verge of breaking down due to the huge pressure countless times. My grades fluctuated up and down. I was called to the office by the head teacher, and when I was out, my eyes were red. There weren't many people in the classroom as they had all gone to have dinner. I buried my head on the desk. Suddenly, someone patted me on the back. It was the first time that Andres came to talk to me. I looked up at him and suddenly became aware of my own state. I felt so embarrassed that I wanted to lower my head. Luna, Andres began, in a gentle voice, I have something for you. He opened his palm. His fingers were even and beautiful, and there was a blue paper star in his palm. I was so flattered that I just stared at him in a daze and didn't take it. Andres placed the paper star on the desk and leaned back against the edge of the desk, saying slowly, it's normal for grades to fluctuate. Don't be too anxious. Carefully look for the key points of the wrong questions, remember them, and practice makes perfect. You can do it, right? Only then did I realize that Andres had come to comfort me. What does it feel like to be comforted by the boy you have a secret crush on? Probably even with tears in your eyes, the corners of your mouth can't help but turn up. I asked Andres if he would also feel like this. Andres smiled and said, yes, when you knocked me off the first place. I burst into laughter through my tears. I asked Andres which university he wanted to apply to. Andres said he wanted to apply to University H. University H. I silently remembered it in my heart. That was the goal I would strive for in the second half of the semester. I placed that paper star on the desk. Every time I looked at it, I couldn't help but admire it. Andres' star was really beautifully folded. Until one time when I accidentally opened it, I found a line of small characters inside. The handwriting was neat and delicate. May you shine like a star. The next day, when I opened my eyes, it was already noon. I was still holding the diary in my arms. The open page was damp. I wiped my eyes and then realized that my face was covered with tears. I had a very long dream and had been crying all the time. I kept crying, but when I was awakened from the dream, I couldn't remember what I was crying about. After I got myself together, it was a rare sunny day today. Rose was already in the living room. During this period of time, she had been keeping me company all the time. I wanted to treat her to a meal I cooked myself. When I went to the supermarket, I ran into Andres and his wife. I just stood there, frozen, unable to move my feet, because it seemed that I heard Andres mention my name. He said to her, Luna won't show up again. She won't come to bother us anymore. I was stuck there, as if plunged into an ice cave. Andres seemed to remember me like this. I pushed the shopping cart and walked over. Before I could get close, I was pulled back by Rose, who came around the corner. She looked at me with worried eyes and asked, Luna, what's wrong with you? I pointed at Andres, who was about to leave not far away, and said, I just heard him mention my name. Rose, my voice trembled, does he remember me? Rose looked over casually and sighed. Luna, you've shown up around him so many times. Isn't it normal for him to remember your name? He's married. Even if he really could remember, what could you do? Rose's voice was calm, with a soothing tone, "You said you wouldn't bother him anymore. But what if he really remembers me?" Rose changed the direction while holding my arm and said in a low voice, "He won't." At night, I had a dream. In the dream, I went back to the night when I confessed my love to Andres. Andres wasn't surprised at that time. He stood in front of me. After listening to my confession, he suddenly laughed softly, leaving me at a loss, standing there. After a while, I heard his voice with a hint of laughter. He said, "It wasn't easy. Waiting for your confession." After he said that, my brain just froze on the spot. Since Rose noticed that I liked Andres, she had been urging me to confess my feelings. But I always thought I should wait a little longer, get a little closer to him. Wait for the right time, until I was good enough. Later, gradually, Andres showed up around me more and more often. When I encountered difficulties, Andres would always patiently guide me step by step to solve them. When I was close to him, I would still be distracted like a useless person. Andres would also look down at me patiently, half teasing and half serious. Actually, I can explain it a second time. At that moment, I was suddenly brought back to the brilliant sunset evenings in high school. Also at that moment, I realized that the boy I had been chasing for so long was finally getting closer to me step by step. I originally thought it was arranged by the teacher. Later, I learned that it was Andres who took the initiative to come closer. I was working hard in the places where he couldn't see, and he was also in the places where I couldn't see, silently helping me grow. Until we were at the same pace. Before, I had a simple understanding of the word gentle. It was until what he said on the night of my confession that I truly understood the power when gentle and Andres were combined. He told me, "Don't be inferior. I want you to truly feel that you are excellent, not looking up to anyone. It's the same for studying and for love. You don't need to look up to me. You are the moon yourself." Only then did I understand the efforts Andres had made behind me during this period of time. After waking up, I couldn't fall asleep again. I looked out of the window, subconsciously facing south, and stared quietly. I stared for a very long time, as if this could relieve my sadness. I still couldn't resist the urge to go to Andres. But when I was really about to approach him, I hesitated. I stood on the opposite side of the road, looking at the two people on the other side, unable to take a step forward. Andres was carefully holding her hand, looking down at her, and I didn't know what he was saying. The woman slowly smiled and gently patted Andres on the body. The atmosphere was so harmonious that there was no room for anyone else. What identity should I go over with? I didn't know, but my head hurt badly. I was so sad that I felt suffocated. "Andres, how could you forget me?" The next day, I went to that supermarket again. I didn't see Andres, but I saw his wife. She probably really didn't like me. She looked me up and down. She seemed to want to say something but didn't say it in the end and just turned around and left. I stared at the diamond ring on her hand, and an unbearable sadness welled up. My eyes turned red in an instant. Since then, I could often see the traces of Andres and his wife. I saw that Andres would bring her a bouquet of flowers every day. I also saw her holding Andres' hand and asking him what he wanted to eat tonight. I saw Andres and her feeding a stray cat together. The two of them standing together looked really well matched. I stood there, watching silently for a long time. The thought of going up to question them gradually dissipated with these warm scenes. It seemed that it was okay like this now. There was someone he loved. And there was also someone who loved him. Perhaps because I showed up around them frequently, Andres noticed it. That day, Andres contacted me. Just a few simple words. He said, "Let's talk." It was a heavy autumn rain that day. I sat in the coffee shop, waiting quietly. I waited until the heavy rain was coming to an end. Andres finally arrived late. He pushed the door open, looked around the shop, and his gaze finally landed on me. His expression was calm, without any waves. He was as calm as if he was looking at a stranger. I sipped the coffee in my hand. It was completely cold, just like my current state of mind. I deliberately chose this shop. It was the one we used to come to often. Even the seat was the one we usually sat in. Andres took his seat across from me without showing any emotion. He said in a polite and distant tone, "Sorry to have kept you waiting. I was held up by something. I don't know why, but the way he looked today was quite different from how I remembered him. Perhaps I was the only one who remained where I was. Everything had changed. It should be me who apologizes. I'm bothering you again." Andres gave a faint smile. "No need to apologize. I also have something to discuss with you." As soon as he said that, I knew that from then on, I wouldn't even have the chance to meet him again. Yes, he already had his own life. How could I keep bothering him? I had expected this all along, but when this day actually came, the sadness was still unavoidable. I looked up at him and said, "I just want to confirm one last time." "Do you really?" As soon as the last two words came out, I suddenly felt a pang of sadness in my nose. Looking at Andres across from me, his face seemed blurry. I suppressed the urge to cry and asked, "Do you really not remember me anymore? The Andres who got soaked all the way to bring me an umbrella on a rainy day? The Andres who came to the downstairs of my neighborhood in the middle of the night just because of my simple words, 'I want to see you'? The Andres who silently helped me grow to accommodate my inferiority complex? How could he suddenly be gone completely?" I could feel my emotions on the verge of exploding bit by bit, and my voice even choked up. In order not to look too down and out and to maintain some dignity for this last meeting, I managed to force out a smile. Probably because it was uglier than crying, Andres frowned slightly. His eyes were focused on me, and he had been looking at me quietly all along, but he didn't open his mouth to answer. I saw him open his mouth several times, but he swallowed the words back. The silence said it all. The way he looked at me was so different from the Andres back then. If possible, I would rather believe that he had lost his memory. I didn't want to admit that he didn't love me anymore. After a long stalemate, I finally came to my senses and said softly, "I understand. Thank you. Wish you a good life for the rest of your days." Andres seemed to finally breathe a sigh of relief and nodded gently. "You too." Andres left. It started to drizzle outside the window again. I sat by the window, looking in the direction he had left. I don't know how long I stared. It seemed that ever since I could remember, I had always been behind Andres, watching him silently. By a lucky chance, we walked side by side for a period of time, but in the final analysis, I still had to let him go. "Andres, you've forgotten about Luna, who has liked you from behind for 10 years. You told her never to be inferior, whether in life or in love. You probably didn't expect that she's still having feelings for you until now. In every minute and second that you don't know. If it were the old you, you would surely call me a fool. But now you're so strange that I can't even utter a word." I just sat there in my seat, crying. How could I forget? I sat there alone until evening. Before the coffee shop closed, Rose rushed in. With my swollen eyes from crying, when I saw the worried look in Rose's eyes, I couldn't help crying again. "Rose. Sorry. I couldn't hold it back. I just wanted to." Before I could finish saying, "for the last time," Rose suddenly rushed over and pulled me into her arms. Her voice was also choked with sobs. "Who told you to come here by yourself? How long have you been sitting here? Aren't you cold wearing so little?" She held my hand tightly. "Luna, I really don't know what to say to you. Please call me next time you want to go out, don't come alone." Rose was always like this, standing firmly behind me without hesitation. "For the last time." I tried to force out a smile. "I won't go to see him again in the future." Every time I mentioned Andres, Rose always looked at me with a worried gaze. She was probably afraid that I would get depressed again. Gradually, I stopped showing these emotions and stopped disturbing Andres' life. But this period of time was especially difficult to get through. But Rose never left me. When she was off work or on vacation, she would take me to various cities to relax. As long as I kept myself busy, it wouldn't be so sad when I recalled the past. Sometimes when I looked at Rose's back, I suddenly felt that things weren't that bad. On the day of the first snow, I drove my car to Rose's downstairs and called her down. Rose didn't even comb her hair and rushed down in a panic. When she saw me, she let out a sigh of relief. What are you doing at this late hour? I'm going back tomorrow. What? I interrupted Rose's words and pointed at the trunk with my finger, signaling her to open it. Rose looked at me suspiciously and muttered as she opening it, "What is it? So mysterious." As the trunk slowly opened, Rose's sound gradually grew quieter. The light in the trunk shone on Rose's face. She turned her head, and I could clearly see the tears in her eyes. "Do you like it? It's a gift for you." I spent nearly half of my savings to pick out some gifts that suited Rose. It took Rose a long time to come to her senses. She looked up at me and suddenly burst into tears. "What are you doing, Luna? Thank you for accompanying me for so long," I leaned on the car and said with a smile. "If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have made it through." That night, Rose was extremely emotional and cried in my arms. "I know you've been having a tough time these days. As a friend, I couldn't really help much. I could only stay by your side. Actually, I've always known that you couldn't forget Andres. I didn't plan to persuade you. I won't interfere with your decisions. I just want you to ensure your own safety." Rose said this and then smiled. "Luna. Actually, you've helped me more. You deserve what I do for you." These days, I've been running around to numb myself, always feeling that I was about to forget Andres. But deep in my heart, I still couldn't let it go. That night when I was watching a movie with Rose, I suddenly found an old movie ticket. The date was today of last year. The date when Andres still loved me. We probably had made an appointment to watch a movie together. Things had changed. Now, Andres' lover was no longer me. Rose's voice rang out in front, and she waved her hand and shouted, "What are you in a daze for? The movie is about to start." I put the movie ticket into my bag, as if I was carefully storing away my love for Andres. Carefully, completely, and pressing it deep down. There's no denying that I still love you. In every detail of life. But I no longer have the identity to bother you. Then, in every moment when I remember you, I wish you a good life for the rest of your days. I looked up to meet Rose's gaze and replied, "Coming." Rose's perspective. Luna seemed to be ill. She said she saw Andres. But Andres had been dead for 3 months. The fingers with which I was holding my phone gradually turned cold. I asked in a voice that almost lost its sound, "Luna, what did you say?" Luna's voice came through the speaker, gentle and firm. "I saw Andres, right at the entrance of this milk tea shop." As she said this, her tone suddenly dropped. "But he seemed not to remember me." 3 months ago, a particularly touching news story was suddenly broadcast on TV, along with a blurry video that went viral on the internet. A boy resolutely rushed into a sea of flames to save the girl he loved. The girl was safely rescued, but under everyone's eyes, the boy never stepped out of that burning building again. He disappeared from this world along with that big fire. In this era where love is as thin as paper, there was still such a love that would last until death. It immediately aroused countless sighs from netizens. And the male lead in the video was Andres. The moment I got the news, my heart skipped a beat. How could such a gentle boy like Andres be taken away like this? But when I saw Luna, I knew it was true. Andres really had left forever. Luna had liked Andres for a full 7 years. Even standing on the outside, I could still be touched by her passionate feelings. On the day they finally got together after going through so many difficulties, Luna was so happy that she treated our whole dormitory to a meal. That day, she was drunk, with a red face, saying that her confession was successful. The whole dormitory raised their glasses to celebrate for her getting the guy she liked. Later, we also got together and thought about a lot of things, like wedding dresses, diamond rings, and babies. Luna's eyes were shining when she talked about these things. But unexpectedly, within such a short period of time, Andres passed away. That was the first time I saw Luna like this. She was sitting on the ground, like a doll that had been torn apart. She wanted to speak, but her voice was so hoarse from crying that she couldn't make a sound. She was just silently calling my name. "Rose. Rose." She called over and over again, but couldn't say anything. I'm here, I'm here." I tried to comfort her, but words were too pale. so powerless that I could hardly open my mouth myself. How could I comfort her? I didn't know. I gently patted her back and also burst into tears with her that night. Since Andre's passing, Luna had been seriously ill. Her emotions were on the verge of breaking down. Recently, she didn't cry much anymore. Maybe she had cried so much that she had no more tears left. She always sat by the window, looking outside quietly, not saying a word. That direction was exactly where Andres had the accident. She kept all her emotions bottled up inside. I was especially afraid during that period. I always took her out to relax. She seemed to be getting better, talking more. Until today's phone call, which broke my last line of defense in my heart. The psychological trauma that Luna had suffered was even more serious than I had imagined. Luna was just standing at the entrance of the milk tea shop, staring fixedly. I followed her gaze and saw that the figure of that person was quite similar to Andres. But when he turned around, I could see clearly. That wasn't Andres. Luna was looking down, extremely downcast. Rose, Andres seemed not to remember me. Luna. I held her hand tightly, my voice trembling. What did you say? Say that again. Who is Andres? Andres really left forever. Luna had liked Andres for a full 7 years. Standing on the outside, I could still be touched by her passionate feelings. On the day they finally got together after going through so many difficulties, Luna happily treated our whole dormitory to a meal. That day, she was drunk, with a red face, saying that her confession was successful. The whole dormitory raised their glasses to celebrate for her getting the guy she liked. Later, we also got together and thought about a lot of things, like wedding dresses, diamond rings, and babies. Luna's eyes were shining when she talked about these things. However, unexpectedly, within such a short period of time, Andres passed away. That was the first time I saw Luna like this. She was sitting on the ground, like a doll that had been torn apart. She wanted to speak, but her voice was so hoarse from crying that she couldn't make a sound. She was just silently calling my name. Rose. Rose. She called over and over again, but couldn't say anything. I'm here, I'm here. I tried to comfort her, but words were too pale, so powerless that I could hardly open my mouth myself. How could I comfort her? I didn't know. I gently patted her back and also burst into tears with her that night. Since Andre's passing, Luna had been seriously ill. Her emotions were on the verge of breaking down. Recently, she didn't cry much anymore. Maybe she had cried so much that she had no more tears left. She always sat by the window, looking outside quietly, not saying a word. That direction was exactly where Andres had the accident. She kept all her emotions bottled up inside. I was especially afraid during that period. I always took her out to relax. She seemed to be getting better, talking more. Until today's phone call, which broke my last line of defense in my heart. The psychological trauma that Luna had suffered was even more serious than I had imagined. Luna was just standing at the entrance of the milk tea shop, staring fixedly. I followed her gaze and saw that the figure of that person was quite similar to Andres. But when he turned around, I could see clearly. That wasn't Andres. Luna was looking down, extremely downcast. Rose, Andres seemed not to remember me. Luna. I held her hand tightly, my voice trembling. What did you say? Say that again. Who is Andres? Luna raised her finger and pointed at that boy. There, he's standing right there. But he doesn't remember me. At that moment, my heart felt as if it had fallen into an ice cave. The boy's name was Charlie. He stood not far away, staring at Luna for a while before looking up and asking me, "Your friend, is she ill?" Yes. I nodded gently. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. I'll take her away right now. I put 2 cups of milk tea into Charlie's hands and apologized again. Charlie didn't accept them. He said faintly, "Take your friend home." I took Luna to see a psychologist. After a long period of counseling, it didn't work. The doctor sighed, and her tone was also full of compassion. She believed that Andres was still alive and that Luna had locked herself up. She couldn't accept Andres passing and had formed a self-protection mechanism in her mind. She would rather he forgot about her and fell in love with someone else than admit that he had passed away. Rose, I knew Andres wouldn't just leave without a word. Luna became lively again. She was sitting on the sofa, hugging a doll and smiling brightly. I hadn't seen Luna this happy for a long time. She even fabricated a plot of Andres losing his memory in a car accident in her mind. She held my hand and told me that she didn't blame Andres. He was just ill. She always said that memories would come back. She had waited for Andres for 10 years. She could wait a little longer. She was so sincere that I didn't even know how to break it to her. How could I? Andres wouldn't come back anymore. She would go to the street where the milk tea shop was every day and wait for a while. Occasionally when we met, she wanted to talk but was afraid of being presumptuous, so she just kept looking silently. Sometimes she would ask me, as if asking herself. She said how could Andres bear to forget her? She was Luna. I couldn't answer. I just stroked her head and told her to be good every day. The day Luna lost control of her emotions was when she saw Charlie and his fiancée on the street. Her voice was shaking when she talked to me. She said, Rose, I didn't wait for Andres to regain his memory. He fell in love with someone else. He fell in love with another woman, on that street. Luna choked up. I saw it with my own eyes. I thought she would break down and cry hysterically and go up to question them. But she just stood there, crying quietly, watching Charlie hold his fiancée's hand and disappear step by step at the end of the street. After a long, long time, she murmured very softly, Andres. How could you break your promise? Charlie was getting married. Luna asked me to take her there. She said she wouldn't cause trouble and wouldn't give Charlie a headache anymore. She held my hand as if she were a little kid begging for a doll. But actually, she hadn't said many words to Charlie. Her memory was confused again. She had imagined Andres' wedding countless times. She just wanted to see it with her own eyes. I went to talk to Charlie and his fiancée and told them the situation frankly. The two of them were silent for a while, and the fiancé nodded gently. They allowed Luna to attend the wedding. As long as she didn't make a fuss. At the wedding, Luna tugged at my sleeve and asked, if Andres hadn't forgotten, would it be her standing on the stage? I really wanted to tell her that Andres would never forget you. Silly Luna, Andres will always love you. But the one on the stage wasn't Andres. From the second day after the wedding, Luna came out of her room with red eyes. She said she had a dream. A very, very long dream. She cried for a long time in the dream until she could hardly breathe. But she didn't remember the content of the dream when she woke up, but she touched her chest and looked at me. It feels so empty here. Rose, it's so sad. I forgot this dream. I think I probably knew what she had dreamed about. Perhaps it wasn't a dream. It was the memories buried deep in her heart, the love that was so deep it reached to the marrow of her bones. I thought about Luna's situation for a long time, and in the end, I didn't tell her mother. Firstly, her mother's health wasn't good. Secondly, in her current state, I preferred to take care of her myself. No one knew better than I did the place Andres held in Luna's heart. I wanted to save Luna. But she was trapped too deep, so deep that I couldn't even reach her with both hands. Luna probably wanted to go to Andres. She would always run to the street. But she didn't go up to disturb. I didn't know what Luna was thinking anymore, but she seemed even sadder than before. She seemed to be forcing herself to let go. This illness wasn't any easier than facing the reality. But I didn't dare to break it. At least in Luna's current thinking, Andres was still alive. This might be her only comfort. Even if Andres didn't love her. Sometimes I was at a loss. Compared with never having something, the pain of losing something after having it is even more profound. If separation is doomed, why arrange the encounter? Separated by life and death without knowing. The torments in the world are always diverse, but the feeling of pain is the same. I can't see the answer clearly anymore. But sometimes, I can be extremely clear. For the rest of my time, I should live for the relatives and friends I love in this world. After the darkest hour, the dawn will come. At the end of the future, there will be something beautiful waiting for us. Even if it's just a little bit, it's worth going for. Andre's perspective: when the fire broke out and just before the building collapsed, I was extremely glad that I could rush in to find you. You were standing in the fire, shaking your head desperately to stop me from going further. But it was you in front of me. How could I turn back? The fire was fierce. The moment I rushed in, I was prepared for the worst. I don't like doing things without certainty, but this time I couldn't calculate. I thought we could both get out together, but pushing you out of the fire was the most I could do. Between us, at least one of us should survive. If there was only one chance, I hoped it would be you. I saw you crying. I know you've always been a stubborn person. Long ago, I always taught you many things. This is the last lesson I can teach you. Learn to make choices. Luna, can you see my lip movements? Don't hold on to things you can't have. And forget about people you can't love. You have a long life ahead of you. I don't want you to be trapped in the past. This is the last thing I want to teach you, Luna. Learn it, okay? I won't have a chance to say it again. At this last moment, I wanted to open my mouth and wish you a good life for the rest of your days. But I didn't have time to say it. I couldn't even see your face clearly. The fire was so big. The burning sensation when it reached my body was enough to drive a person crazy. Fortunately, I came. Otherwise, it would have been you trapped in there. Actually, I never told you. I had noticed that you liked me a long time ago. How could I not notice? Your eyes were so passionate. At this last moment, many scenes suddenly flashed through my mind. Frame by frame, from high school life to university, and then to confirming our relationship. You were always so self-deprecating. Being humble towards everything is good, but self-deprecation is not advisable. You are excellent and hardworking. Maybe you never realized that when you were moving towards your goal, you were shining all over. Not many guys could resist such a you, and I'm no exception. Actually, the moment I realized I liked you, I was already ready to confess. But your not so firm gaze when you looked at me made me change my mind. Perhaps I should wait a little longer. I didn't want you to be the inferior one in this relationship. If you wanted to work hard, then I would help you move forward together, until the day you truly felt confident came. Therefore, every day while waiting for your confession, I was prepared. After you had the courage to confess and it was over, I would accept my confession. I always believe that the beginning of a relationship should be grand and formal. So is my love for you. This confession should also be written by me to start the first chapter of our relationship. I want you to know that you were never running towards this relationship alone. I just reached the finish line earlier than you. And I've been waiting for you at the finish line. You once asked me if there was an afterlife. I believe there is. So don't be sad. You know, I'm used to being prepared for everything. So I'm always ahead of you in everything. This time, I'm also ahead. I've arranged our home in the next life in advance. I was so focused on getting you out that I didn't have time to tell you. Luna, I love you. You can feel it, right? Right?